This is not.
Awaken World News with Patrick David Bonin. Good day, lovely people. Thanks for joining me on Awaken World News. Today I got Farrell Segall. He's an electrical engineer, and he's been working as a counselor, and he also runs a company called Top Techie. You want to tell us something about yourself?
Yeah.
And your company?
Well, Top Techie is just a lot of people are techies, technology people, but the spelling is Tekkies because in South Africa, techies are little running shoes. And it was just a play on words, really, to get the word Top Techies. And it was not used on the internet, so toptechies.com, Top Techies on Facebook.
Oh, nice.
And it's a unique name. Nobody else has.
I'll put it on the screen here.
Lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a little guy, actually, which is Top Techie, a little sketch of a guy, of a little man type of person. You can look. I'll send you a little clip of that as well.
Cool. And what do you do with
So I design and innovate stuff. I'm more than an engineer. I got involved in manufacturing semiconductors in the early 1970s. And the end result is I design hardware from the bottom up. So I can fix things. I know how they work. I know what they're supposed to do, even if they're not working.
I think we can have some fun together one day.
Yeah, I've become like the equipment whisperer nowadays, whether it's sawmills, welders, washing machines, you name it, electronic stuff generally. That's
very useful person for the new world we're going to build.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't agree that the way we're moving is in our best interests, unfortunately, where everything is connected and everything is seamless and you tap your phone to pay and you have social credit scores and things like that. It's gone.
But it's really easy. Everything's on your phone, don't you?
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, the last time, in history has shown us, as soon as people have to show identification and be tracked, things don't end well. They never have. And the good guys are not normally the guys pushing this type of technology, unfortunately. So we've got to be really wide awake and aware of what actually is going on, and stop being told not to think for yourself. In other words, start thinking for yourself. Is this the right thing to do? And this is something I would do, not something I'm being told to do. It's too easy to say, oh, I'm just doing what I was told to do.
So there's a new climate action plan that's coming up, and comes into this high-tech new world. Do you want to tell us something about that and what's going on?
Yeah, the comment recently is we're running out of conspiracy theories, right? Because people said, 15-minute cities, oh no, that would never happen. Well, unfortunately, it is happening. We already have reached a stage where the local village grocer, the corner shop, is finding it more and more difficult to make a living because of the cost of their items. People will rather get in their vehicle and drive a few miles to go get a decent price for a particular product. The problem is that these big box stores were set up originally to lower the price of items. And in some cases they do, but the profits of the mass buying of these organizations goes to the shareholders and the owners of those corporations. It's not coming back to the person who's actually doing the shopping. Years ago we would have local stores, and we should actually have that. I think that the problem that some of these new climate action plans with restricting travel, restricting the use of fossil fuels, they're really short-sighted, because at the end of the day, this thing is not going to end well. We cannot move everything to an electrical supply. One of the moves is to do away with burning, whether it's wood, coal, fossil fuels, oil, and move towards a sophisticated machinery in the way of a heat pump to heat your house, cool it in summer, heat it in winter, but totally dependent on electrical grid, which is very vulnerable. Here in Canada, with the power lines running through forests, whether it's forest fires in the summer, as we're going through right now, wooden poles don't stand up very well in a fire. The same thing happens in winter. Ontario and Quebec went through ice storms this winter, where people were without power for weeks. And one doesn't realize this, that when there's no power, your furnace won't run. You might have a natural gas furnace, but you don't have power to run the fans, to drive the heat around the house. So you freeze. The fear-mongering about, heat domes, one just has to look at the facts. More people die in winter because of extreme cold than die from exhaustion with heat. During the so-called pandemic lockdowns, we lost enormous numbers of seniors during a heat wave because they were locked in their homes, in their rooms, where they weren't allowed out into the shade of a building, or even under some trees in a garden. So one's got to put some thought behind the fear-mongering news media. I have a decal on my car which says basically media is the virus. Unfortunately, people are not thinking for themselves and not looking at the real data. Yes, the climate action plan for our region is basically just being handed down to us, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, none of us are voting for any of this stuff.
And nobody knew. There are, as far as has been disclosed, 10 major targeted plans, and amongst those are in the nearly 100 action items divided up in those 10 plans.
Just bombard us with change, right?
Yeah, and these have been decided upon by paid officials in the regional district. You and me, our taxes are going to pay these people to develop these plans, but they've done it without telling us. And they did it without input from us as to what we really need. And eventually our regional director board will vote on whether this is a good idea or not without actually having had any input into these plans. So, I've been very vocal about that recently. I've asked that the public be made clearly aware that this is happening with full details. Not everybody at home on the internet is going to read through a 60-page document. So we're hoping to have multiple public meetings in the next few days. The first meeting starts in Creston on Monday, I believe, and I will plan to go across to Creston to attend that meeting.
Okay.
But I've asked for at least 5 meetings, each to discuss the options of those 10 points, 2 points per meeting, no more than 2 at a meeting. You cannot discuss a 63-page document in 2 hours.
And that's the plan.
And their plan is just set up one meeting in each little region or area around the region, and in a month's time they're going to vote.
What can people do? Can people write letters to somebody, or is there something that they can do to get in contact with you to do something?
Yes, well, the best thing to do, I would say, is get hold of the regional district of Central Kootenay, who are in Nelson, and ask them for a printed copy of the full document, not just the 10-point plan. You want the full document of all the actions that are being planned. So on those 10 points, nobody should be or expected to print out at home these. Yes, it's available online, but online you're going to read one screen at a time. It really doesn't come together. You can't highlight. You can. There's sophisticated editing tools, but the average person, there are an enormous number of people, myself included, do not have internet at home. I
don't have internet at home yet. There
you go. And we rely on public notices and public notice boards. We need almost my attitude is this: if there was a fire in the region and the emergency services people have the time and the initiative to come and knock on every door, telling people that there's an emergency, this is the time to go and knock on every door and give everybody a 60-page document telling them what has been planned for their region.
Yeah, no doubt.
We don't need a bylaw officer to turn up in 6 weeks' time once it's been voted in and tell you that you have to move out of your house because it doesn't meet the codes, the building codes.
This bureaucracy around the buildings, for example, when I was building my house, there's the new building code was you needed argon gas in the windows, or else you couldn't pass inspection and all this stuff, right? So my neighbor had to take out windows and then buy thousands of dollars worth of windows more because of these bureaucratic nonsense. You can't reuse, which is better for the environment, a nice tube-paned window that doesn't have argon in it, and these
Correct.
kind of things.
Well, and even that, a comment that I can just add to it, that is the Canada Standards Authority, CSA, as you'll see stamps on building materials or on electrical appliances. To obtain that stamp for a building material, I was told in Vancouver by the CSA personnel that a building material only needs to last for 17 years, 17 years, to receive such a stamp. In other words, it's got to be a window, for example, or an electrical outlet, or a door, or something that's mass manufactured and be sold as a building material. Well, I used to live in a house in South Africa that was built in 1926. That house is now nearly 100 years old. It's still standing, that house. It has nothing in it that is drywall. It doesn't have a timber frame. It doesn't have insulation that we're using now. None of the building materials that are available at your regular building suppliers is going to last 100 years.
No.
Literally nothing. The glass maybe, but the double pane with the argon gas, you're going to end up with condensation in the next 10 years inside that window.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not saying that it's wrong to insulate your house. I'm saying that if you can live with an extra cord of firewood to heat your house over winter, so be it. Why? I'm reading a book at the moment which doesn't necessarily debunk the whole climate issue. The climate is warming. It's been warming since the Ice Age. We used to have ice, in this region, even in the Kootenays. There were glaciers here in all the valleys. But the point is that the fear causes more problems than the actual actions. We should be preparing for a warming cycle of this planet that we live on. And in doing that, if we're worried about, for example, forest fires, we need to thin out the forests. We need to do management of the forests. That is the best thing we can do. We need to put major fire breaks around the cities and towns and villages.
I'm with that. There's some big fires coming and we need to be ready.
And to me, as an engineer, these trees we have in our forests here, certainly in the Kootenays and all over British Columbia, are solar batteries. The only carbon that can be emitted by burning that tree, the only thing we get out is the heat, the energy that the tree absorbed over its years, and the carbon which it absorbed from the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Burning the tree is a totally neutral activity. There is nothing wrong with burning wood. And it irks me to see stash piles in forests after they've done clear cutting just set alight and burnt. That should be part of the forestry practice, is to cut that material up into sort of 2-foot sized chunks, put it at a roadside pull-off where people can come and pick it up for free for firewood.
This is part of the cycle we've lived with for ever, eons.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Burn the excess stuff and do something with it.
Yes, right? use the energy from that.
That's right.
Don't burn it up and let it go into the air and have...
We're using dead trees. It's not like we're...
Totally. Trees are the most... And there again, a comment that I've been making recently about the carbon dioxide, because this is the driving factor, that CO2 is the poison. CO2 is the danger. CO2 is not a danger. Currently, we're in the region of like 400 parts per million in the atmosphere. Yeah. Our lungs, a typical scuba diver is allowed to have safely 2,000 parts per million in that scuba tank, in that air tank.
Wow.
And that's a safe level. An acceptable level, and all that happens is your faster breathing rate is when we go up to 5,000. You don't pass out with 5,000 parts per million. You just start breathing faster. So our lungs evolved, if we believe in evolution, our lungs evolved when there was thousands or a few hundred times more CO2 in the atmosphere. The best thing we are doing is feeding the trees and the plants. Without trees and plants, we all die. And the faster they grow, the better it is for all of us.
I don't think we can know how bad things are. They've even done studies on corn where they put it at 1,000 parts per million CO2 and all the way up to 10,000.
I can believe that.
And it grew the same.
Yeah.
It didn't. Nothing changed between 1,000 and... So 1,000 was like the max you need to... If you want to
Yes, well, right now at 400, it was 300 before the industrial age. So in the last 120 years, since we've been burning coal and fossil fuels, as we call fossil fuels, which the Earth is producing under the ground, it was from previous absorption of CO2. But the point is that that's increase from 300 to 400. The trees and our plants are still starving. They are, looking for as much as they can get. So, my opinion is, unfortunately, we've been through a pandemic in the last few years where organizations who, like the United Nations, World Health Organizations, World Economic Forum, have grabbed the opportunity to control how and what we should be doing. And unfortunately, I asked the question recently for a village that was going to put solar panels up. Why are you putting the solar panels up? Well, you already have an existing energy supply, electrical energy supply that comes from hydropower. Why do you need to put solar power up? Solar power is going to need batteries, needs an inverter, it needs somebody to shovel the panels during winter. You have to cut down a tree which is in the way, which is going to shade the panels on the roof of your building. You're going to have to redo the roof of the flat roof building because you're going to puncture the membrane, and the building was never designed to take the extra load of the panels. Yes, you would have had snow load. And the reason was given, we're receiving a grant. And that's not a reason. That is no reason. That is because the government is telling you to do something. It's like you cannot be closer than 2 meters to somebody.
And they probably told them which company to use, too.
So, yeah, unfortunately...
Because that's how this game works, right? It's cartelism.
It's everybody helping one another, yes. And unfortunately... these panels, I would say, if you set up a factory here producing silicon solar cells, photovoltaic cells, and give people jobs, but it's not. We're going to buy these panels from China or Malaysia or Korea. We are not making.
And we don't know how long they're going to last. 17 years.
That's exactly that.
Like, you know what I mean? So this is the to me, when you promote something like this and the whole world's promoting it, like the big world thing is solar. If they're doing this, it's something that they can continue making money for, because it'll always be the great new solar system to put in.
You're totally correct. Right? One's got, the old story, follow the money. You'll find that there are organizations that are promoting this are making big money. Wind power and solar energy are great, but they're totally unreliable. You don't know when you're going to get it. And the end result is, the elephant in the room, we have opportunities to put in nuclear power, but everybody's scared about nuclear power because the fear is that it's going to blow up and we're going to have a Chernobyl and we're going to have a Fukushima event right on our doorstep. But we fail to recognize there are hundreds of nuclear power stations generating power, clean energy every day, 24/7.
Well, even what we have is already what we need. It's like right. Zero. It's supposed to be zero carbon-ish, right?
It's totally. Energy, so. And then people will point to me, well, what about the waste? I said, you want to go and have a look at an oil sands development and a tailings pond? Here in the Kootenays, we have HB Mine tailings pond.
I have this feeling some things are going to change, though, like as far as energy in general. Like there's these just new there's new things coming out soon. I think this is part of what this war is about. Sometimes there's like suppression of certain technology that we're going to see things that are going to change things after this war, I feel.
Well, I may be very controversial in this next comment, and that is, I grew up in South Africa under strict sanctions, international sanctions, to change a despicable government that had an apartheid era, rules, regulations, etc. But under the sanction era, South Africa developed its own technologies, amazing technologies that were developed in the country. Right now, we're fighting a war, and we've pointed fingers at a country like Russia. The Russians are going to become incredibly innovative in the next few years. The reason being because they cannot use what we have in the West. They have to evolve and develop this themselves. It's no wonder that they are partnering with the Chinese, because the Chinese are in a similar situation. The rest of the world doesn't like their social credit system. I don't either. Excuse me. But the point is that when human beings become really innovative and clever when they've been pushed into a corner. So we've got to be careful who you point fingers at and who you accuse as being your enemy. very often your enemy becomes the person who you must lead, you must follow afterwards.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, if we even look, it's the people that all of a sudden all this new technology popped up was right after World War II with the Nazis, and it's like it's cool technology, but who has it in their hands, right? Like, who's wielding these new technologies?
Yes, the mining industry of the world wouldn't be what it is if not for Nobel, who developed a detonator to detonate explosives. Explosives are particularly dangerous, but once the Nobel Prizes are all out of the money and the developments out of a detonator device. The same thing came with nuclear warheads. If not for a war, we would never have had an atomic bomb. And the result of that, of a Manhattan Project, was developing, being able to split the atom and generate the energy. Unfortunately, where does it get used? It often gets used for the wrong purposes.
That was like here in Canada, where they first learned how to make the nuclear bomb.
Well, actually, Chicago, a squash court in Chicago, at the University of Illinois, they converted a squash court because they needed the high roof of a squash court to be able to have the first little nuclear pile.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong on what the thing was, but there's something that happened in like Alberta or something that was part of the...
It could very well be part of this Manhattan Project.
I'm not too sure, but...
But the same as the Curies, Madame Curie, who worked with a lot of radiation, eventually died from radiation poisoning, radiation cancer caused by radiation. I don't want to get off onto another topic, but that's this whole healthcare issue. We nowadays call anything we don't know what ailment is, we call it cancer. With abnormal growth and whatever, but we've polluted this planet to such an extent it's almost it's unbelievable. We're all dying anyway, but it's unbelievable to me that there's not more ailments than we have, because we are poisoning the skies. We do weather modification.
Quite adaptive creatures. We can kind of. It looks like there's like bacteria that grow in like acids and stuff that. And those like weird. We're becoming those creatures that can grow.
I think the thing that we've got, what's going to happen. You said you can sort of feel changes are coming, and I think the changes will be that eventually we will start developing skills, technologies to live with the planet as we've created it. We're messing around with a lot of things, unfortunately, but the best thing we can do is work on how to live in that altered situation. We're never going to change things. Every event where it's nature versus man, nature wins. We've got to learn to live there. We are nature. We belong to this planet. The planet doesn't actually belong to us, and we've got to learn to live with the planet, with the changes that are taking place. Yesterday I read for the first time that there's thousands of little islands in the Pacific that have actually grown in size, even though the sea levels have risen by like 23 millimeters.
This world's just doing all sorts of weird things.
And yes, these islands are not getting smaller, they're actually getting bigger. So, there goes another conspiracy theory that the sea level rise, the problem with sea level rise is that the people in New York, Vancouver, that are literally on the sea level, refuse to look at what Holland did, or the Dutch, and build dikes and canals and things around their cities to protect them from the sea. We're not doing that. We're saying, we can turn back the clock and make the seas go down again. Moses tried to do that in a storybook, and I'm not sure that we've got those skills at hand anymore.
Well, I think in the storybook it went overnight, actually. Like in like the movie theater version, there was this channel going through, but it's actually like in the real story is that it went the next day. They woke up and it went through. Which there is situations that water moves like that, and I think there is the mysterious parts. That thing about like technology and where it's all going and who's gonna be in control of it in the future. And I feel like there's people can take two different directions here and like go along with everything, and they're gonna make it very appealing to do it. Right. Like they're going to make it really comfortable, especially at the first. But to me, I look, what are the things that we could look back at that got us into this mess in the first place. And you and I have talked about it a little bit. It was about schooling,
Right.
and like how I think it's we've been building indoctrination centers to create issues, and I feel like if anything needs to be burnt to the ground and built back up again, it's the education system. So what do you think is some of the biggest changes that our education system needs?
Well, I was put in a corner a few years ago as a counsellor in Selma, where a proposal was made to build another childcare centre for 30 kids in the region here, in the Kootenays. And I'm not against childcare, because I believe when families need that additional income, parents need to go out and work. It's sad that I commented today on my social media that, Justin Trudeau is just giving everybody in July $1 a day to help with food costs. And yet his family spent $56,000 last year on food. Going to work to have to afford to feed your family is a crazy situation that we've put this country into. But coming back to education, if we were to provide 30 daycare space, all day care, and I've got to care where I put the hyphen, but basically all day care facility, where will those 30 parents work? Because there are no industrial jobs in the town anymore. Yes, if they're skilled, there may be a few. You've got a few mass timber manufacturers here. We've got some automotive industries here, none of which at the moment know how to deal with electric vehicles. Some of those that are around are closing down as fast as you can count them, because they don't want to deal with it, because firstly of all, the maintenance on an electric vehicle is generally a lot lower than it is on a regular internal combustion engine. But if we do away with that, we're going to already do away with all the parts suppliers. So again, jobs have disappeared. So my feeling was, the best thing we can do is teach parents how to bring up children. We should have homeschooling groups. We should have, local little community schooling things where we teach kids real morals, real life situations. Putting 30 little kids in a
teach them how to think instead of teach them how to learn.
Totally. The days of teaching kids for an industrial age to go work in a factory is gone. I recently attended an artificial intelligence AI conference down in Coeur d'Alene in Idaho a few weeks ago. Really interesting talks. There's a fear that people are going to lose their jobs because AI is going to take over the knowledge-based industry. And some influential people, including Mr. Musk, have said, we better stop here because this is going to be dangerous. Well, the people who are going to lose their jobs, I can tell you who they are. They're the professors at the universities. They're the doctors and the lawyers. Because now with sort of ChatGPT, these sort of artificial intelligence platforms, if a medical platform was available that had your medical history on it, it would be able to diagnose a potential issue you're having 99% more accurately than a doctor would. Because the doctor's going to ask you what is wrong. And I have the best feeling about veterinary surgeons, because a veterinary surgeon can't ask the dog or the cat what's wrong. They intuitively have to feel and touch and look at the cat and look at the animal and say, this is what's wrong. I've also had family who are medical doctors, and I'm an engineer, so I tend to fix things. Doctors bury their mistakes. So the chatbot, on the other hand, may make mistakes. But if it knows
I assume it will.
But in most of the cases, if it knows your medical record, your medical history, and it's got access to all the world's human sort of diagnoses and opportunity, it's not going to write off alternative health cures. It's not going to write off, healthy eating. When we went through this lockdown pandemics, the stores that were open were not the health stores, were the fast food bloody places. And one of the biggest problems in our Western world is obesity and diabetes. So yeah, if you want to get a healthy recipe,
we need to be able to teach kids maybe about like all of these kind of things rather than like, we used to me, education was kind of like the child toy, that there's a square, the triangle, the circle, and they push it through the right shape through, right? And to me, I see like education system is these balls of clay, like children being pushed through these squares.
Right.
And there's not many squares, and I think that a big part of it is we have to let them understand what they are, like, instead of trying to push them through squares like the education system is. And I feel that if you had all the different I think it was really silly to switch all the kids' age, how they used to be all the grades together.
Yeah.
Because then you teach them how to teach. Because then I can learn a drum beat, right? And then I can teach it to a kid. That kid can teach that drum beat to the other kid, and we just go further. And you see how that works. The kid, as soon as he sees me teach him that, and he does it for a couple of weeks, he can teach somebody else. And I don't think we should. We need to let them realize that there's a lot of knowledge right inside them. And like, there's a lot of teach them reasoning by giving them freedom to do so, and like I said, when you have all the different ages together, you can really, I think there's something big there psychologically to like have like a community and family kind of vibe like that. It's like big brothers and big sisters in your classroom.
I agree with you, and unfortunately, this sort of blends into what we were talking about earlier. The current system wants everybody to become foot soldiers and cannon fodder one day and do what they're told. If the government tells you you're going to have to go and fight, you're going to have to go and fight. And you please don't think for yourself whether you should or you shouldn't. Mm-hmm. And that is what we're heading into that situation. Eventually, there will be enough of us, I'm confident, who will turn around and say, no.
Well, we got enough this time.
Yeah, not this time. No. And, I grew up in a country where there were different racial groups. But we're all human beings. Mm-hmm. We're all a species. Racism only exists amongst the people who name it. I'm caught up in this whole sexual orientation issue right now, which I think we've turned down the wrong avenue, because eventually, what do you want to have, men menstruating? I mean, that would be maybe the final call, is when trans men suddenly realize that they can now menstruate. They maybe realize this is not actually this is not what we signed up for, guys. And maybe that's where it will stop. I don't know. But the problem is that we, as you're saying, we're teaching kids. We've got to teach kids to think for themselves, and at appropriate ages too. And as you say, mixed age classrooms, I'm all for that, because often the younger kids are the smartest, because they pick up from all the older kids what the others have already learned at an early age. The issue I have at the moment is that kids are going through a schooling system with no guarantee that they're going to be able to earn a livelihood for themselves when they finish school. We become peasants, reliant on a socialist system where they're going to be have handouts.
And I see like if that's a wave we're going to go through, and we're going to have to, in a certain way, to mitigate our exposure to what's happening. I feel like it is something that's going to happen for a while anyways. Regardless, like it's a wave that's coming at us. Mm-hmm. What I think about it is we need to teach children about culture, about the spirit, about like things that they're passionate about. Because if we don't have anything to do, and they're going to, and for a ton of people, because we got to think there's people everywhere out here. What do we have for jobs, right? It's like, if they're being taken care of, you can either go onto your virtual reality and check out, or you can be like, wow, I have freedom to get into my passion, and like, and I think that we have to teach that has to be back into our lives, is remembering it's body, mind, and soul, and we have to like realize is when we bring more art and culture and philosophy, and just like letting people think and getting them like excited about what they have inside them, that then whatever they do to us will transcend it. And like, teach the kids.
I had a wonderful experience just this morning. I was in Nelson because I ran a class teaching kids how to use a 3D printer. The school had a 3D printer for a number of years, but it was the teacher's 3D printer, and the kids were not allowed to use it. So they got me
just bring the soccer ball to kick around in front of the kids.
So I got involved because the new tech skills teacher said, "Can you come and teach us all how to use this machine?" And I said, "Fine, I'll do that." And what I did is I realized they've got to have a target. They've got to have a reason to use the machine. So I gave them a chance to build a particular thing, little holders for air plants. Because I was doing an event with giving out air plants.
Okay.
And what I started doing is I found just showing them how the printer works. I realized there were like 3 kids who were like really clued into it. They thought, I want to learn this. This is really cool.
Yeah.
So what I did is I taught one of them how the printer works and how to use it. I said, now you go and teach those other 2 kids how to use the printer. And then the rest of you, there are 14 in the class, there are 3 of you now. You take all the other kids and you teach the other kids how to do it. Software, CAD, design this something you want to print, this little housing and a holder for a plant. Take the file, convert it to a file that can be printed, make sure it's the right size, that it fits on the printer, that it's not a whole planter pot, it's a little vase that can be printed, and print some. And then I'm going to give them away at a market for these things. Anyway, this thing it's amazing because now there's a class of 14 kids, and literally every kid knows how to use a 3D printer. And I only taught 1.
That's the game,
and
right?
This is what. So again, coming back to the education system is teach the teacher. That's what, and not teach 30 kids in a class and expect them to pass a test based on what I taught all of them, because every kid learns slightly differently, and the best teacher is another kid, because they listen to each other. Listen to some old dude like me standing up there talking, an engineer, we better listen to this guy, he knows everything. No, I don't know everything. I'm as much as all I do is I know how to do it, so I'm going to teach you to know how to do it. And it's really easy, as you say, it's like, here's a soccer ball now, I'm the only one who can kick it. You can kick it around, but you don't know. But I was going to tell you, so it's ended up that these kids are really innovative kids in this class. So they just played a hockey match with other schools, and they won the tournament. This little class of 14 kids, they've got a little hockey team.
Okay.
So they made themselves a Stanley Cup out of upside down planter, little what do you call it? Not a bucket, what do you call it? A plant pot.
Okay.
So they've got some upside down plant pots screwed together in the center, wrapped with aluminum adhesive tape. You know the adhesive tape?
Yeah.
So it's all shiny and new. And after they won it, they filled the top cup with orange juice and passed it around, and they were all drinking out of this orange juice. But these kids are innovative because they're making stuff for themselves. So today, what I asked them to do is, this is what education should be. I said, okay, what I want you to do this week is Economic Development Week, countrywide. And those people don't know about it because not much has been said about it. We don't want little businesses succeeding. We've got Walmart and we've got Costco and we've got Canadian Tire.
Centralize it all. That's all they can,
so I said, what I want you to do is is now 3D print a little cup. Go on the internet and find a design for a cup, or you'll get more points in class if you design your own cup. And then in your own, around where you live, find out all the little home businesses and award the cup as an award for the best little business in your community. That's the type of thing. I've given them a goal, a target. The education comes in between. And they will all develop a skill and a practice using designing something, using the 3D printer, printing something, doing a little economic development project, and getting to know the little businesses. And, I'm not a teacher, but I also have an issue that the current teachers are teaching things out of books which were printed a few years back.
By who?
by people who had often ulterior motives of what they wanted the kids to learn. I asked the question today. They have a maths correction list on the board. I said, what do you mean? What's a correction list for maths? Either maths answer is right or wrong. He says, no, they've got books they're using, and there are some answers in the books that are wrong. And the kids are really confused because they go home with this, to do some homework. and they can't come up with the answer that the book says should be the correct answer for an equation. And the parents get asked the question, can you help, because I can't, and the kids' parents are saying, oh, I can't work this out either. And so they have a list. In our efforts to print things, and that things are growing so fast in technology and one thing and another, it's not surprising that we do make mistakes. And that's why I come back to this artificial intelligence thing, that I think I'm not scared of AI. Some people are, but I'm not scared because I'm not going to lose my job because I think out the box and I'm innovative about those things. And the one thing AI cannot do is innovate something that hasn't been done before. It cannot put together a concept of something which nobody has actually
It's all just parts
achieved.
of everything else.
Yeah. Yes, it's got access to an enormous amount of know-how and knowledge that happened before. So you may not know of something that's been developed in India, but the AI chatbot will know that. So it can tell you that. But if you come up with something which has never been done before, AI can't help you.
No, they need the creative, the people that are connected to get that.
So this comes back to our human intellect, human minds, and often when we pushed into a corner, we become very innovative. And I think right now we go always circle back to our beginning discussion about the climate action plan. A large number of the population in our regional areas here have been pushed into the corner now because they're about to release bylaws and action plans which are going to affect everybody. And
it's all got sunshine and rainbows. As a story, it tells you all the plus sides, but never the negatives.
And it's time for us to say no.
No, that's right.
We're not going to do that anymore.
Well, if you can email me over any information on what we've talked about today, I'll put it in the description down below.
Lovely.
So people can get out there and write letters or go and find out information about things in their own communities. And I think we have to just get our voice out there somehow. And I think showing up at city hall meetings in your own towns and all sorts of things like that is ways to make some noise so people can see what's coming and go through the fine print. Don't just listen to what they're telling you.
You've got to realize that people who've been elected predominantly do it because they have an ego that they believe themselves that they will be able to make decisions for you. That's not what they're supposed to be there for. No. They are there to make sure that they judiciously spend the money, the tax money which you've given them.
They're supposed to work for us.
And so, when you hear something that is being decided on your behalf, question it. And look for references, look for information. If you don't know, ask questions, find out. I will send you certainly some of the links, to some of the data, where to get it and where to find out the information. And hopefully, we can see a happier future here.
And just before we finish up here, I have one question. Beyond the schooling change, what kind of things would you like to see? If we know that this wave is going that way, there's a lot of people happily riding it. That world's going to go forever. So imagining a parallel society or parallel world, what kind of changes what would be your main change that you think about that you would like to see in that new world?
Well, the first thing I'd like to see is the family community structures rebuilt, which have been sort of diluted over the last years. I'm not saying that two dads can't bring up a child, and I'm not saying this and that, but when I hear things like we've got to do away with Mother's Day because what happens if a kid's got two dads and being brought up by two men, and I'm saying both those men were the produce of a woman. They both had mothers.
It all came from...
And I'm not saying I don't feel sorry for the kid who says, I don't have a mom. Well, you have a grandmother, and you had, so this is a choice your parents... I'd like to see us bring back this true sense of family, that people actually help one another in communities, that it's not a matter of we have to all just go our own way. We would have a lot less homeless people. There are too many homes around in the world today with one or two people living in a few thousand square foot home. We could easily bring in every single homeless person and give them a bedroom in the house.
Well, even just how much they've taken wood out of this area, like we were talking about earlier. If they dropped wood out like a co-op, and like whatever is taken out of here, if there's businesses involved, whatever it is, there's a certain amount that goes to the community to build housing.
Totally.
Like we have all of this here in Canada, but we've just been, attacked by all directions. We've had a lot of corruption in our country, and it's I hope it comes to an end here soon, but it seems to be good.
So you asked me the family, and then the second thing is, I think I don't know why, but our government seems to be hooked on this reconciliation issue with First Nations and Aboriginal folks. The problem is that between 40 and 90%, it varies from town to town, of the homeless population are Aboriginal Indigenous populations. There's something wrong with this, because if that is really the case, that these are the homeless people on the streets, and then at every business, council, government meeting, we recognize their land on which this is their land, well, we should be doing something about it. We've got plenty land here in this area that should be developed for them, homesteading, give people a house, give them a place. This is how the first settlers to Canada, first settlers in most of the world came along, developed
like you said,
developed an empty piece of land, give them space to live. Here I am with you, wonderful natural environment. We don't have all the mod cons. We don't have a television in every room. We don't have heat pumps, and we don't have all the fancy gadgets. No. You don't need that. You want a healthy life. That is what I'd like to see, is that we turn it around from just acknowledgement that this land is theirs, or land is ours, or I bought this land, I didn't buy it. The point is, do something with it. Because actually we are very fortunate here. We have water, fresh water, we have sun, we have cold climates, but with enough warmth, we can keep ourselves through the climate.
Yeah, and I think that whole reconciliation thing is they have to create a victim to create a cause. Yep. And unfortunately, when I see how badly the First Nations have been treated, I believe there's obviously corruption going on, and they've already seen that, where they're like, give money for them to fix something, and the money doesn't get to the project. So that's happening in all of that. But I do believe that you need somebody that's really hurting for them to create that spot in the heart to push in a wave, and that's like the UNDRIP, and you probably know about that. But that's United Nations coming in and structuring our laws to be under this, and I do believe those are things we need to keep an eye on, and realizes it's not about the color of our skin, it's not about all those things. It's about us being able to speak and be back to this. We need to have communities come back together and talk and negotiate and be like, we're coming together as one. We're not dividing off and doing all this stuff.
No, unfortunately, as I say, I came from South Africa. South Africa now has 11 official languages. Right or wrong, I think it's the wrong way to go. You really want everybody to be able to talk to one another in one language. Do we bring back Latin? Do I cry because the Romans had a language that they were using for their official documents? No. Do I bring back the Aramaic languages? No. The point is, we've given up some of these ancient languages which existed many, many centuries ago, and I know it's sad if somebody had to say to me tomorrow, well, you really can't speak English anymore because we're going for this common language. If there's a sensible reason to do it, I would say let's go for it, because as long as it's a communal thing, that everybody is together. But right now, what's happening under with all of our bring back cultural heritage languages, we're dividing everybody. We're actually going to create more friction than anything else, because we have groups who will not be able to communicate freely with one another without you recognizing me, and that's an ego issue again. That's what I mentioned before. So the governments are playing playing people, and we're the puppets, unfortunately, in this game. To set us apart, because then we can't take over and control.
That's right. Yeah.
We don't want to control. The last thing I want to do is control everybody.
No.
But I would like to see in the future that, as you mentioned, that somebody realize we all one. We are all a human race, and it doesn't matter on the language you speak or the color of your skin or whatever. We should all be able to work together for a common goal, which is peace and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough resources for us all to live well.
Definitely. No, I think we're going into it. It's going to take some time. It looks like a messy bit of time, but I think we are going into it eventually when we realize what we have to leave behind, because there's a lot of us, our own choices to like have the fancy device that they're going to control us with. Right. Like to have a internet or a house that's going to be monitoring and doing everything. Like that's all, we buy that and put it in our own houses, and like, you know, so there's a point where we have to be like, what are some of these fancy things that they're going to offer us to like, that are really enslaving ourselves? So there's a stepping away and realizing there's a certain amount of, myself, I've switched to the flip phone, and it's to me, I feel like you have a smartphone, then you don't have to be as smart. You know what I mean? So
no, you're totally correct.
I want a dumb home. I don't want a smart home.
No.
So
yeah. No, you're perfectly correct. The problem is that we've been led into these with the motive that it's convenient, but we didn't ask for it. And comes back to what I said earlier. Unfortunately, we have this inverted pyramid where the governments are doing things which what they want to do, rather than the people deciding what they want and giving the government the tax money to make it happen. Right now, they actually driving everybody into poverty to be able to control everybody, and then say, well, you know what we're going to do is we're going to give you this tracking device, and it's going to help you because, you know, we will be able to then deliver things to your house. You won't have to get out of your house. You know, we'll lock you down, sort of thing. But it's for your benefit. It's not to anybody. So,
is there anything else you'd like to say before we end this?
No, I'm great. Thanks for
I had
introducing
an awesome conversation with you.
Yeah, no, that was lovely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if anybody wants to contact, you're
welcome to post my my email on there. I'll give that to you.
Sure.
It's my full name Farrell.Segall@gmail.com.
Cool. I'll put that all down in the description area.
And
there.
my Top Techies webpage. You're welcome to go link there as well.
Awesome. I'll put that in there. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all, everybody, and God bless.